Hello, welcome to the channel. Today I thought we could talk about love and performative love, a pseudo love, something that's forced, and specifically in relation to information that is designed to be life-saving, something that's essential for a person's development. Suddenly there's a gatekeeping contract that's got to be agreed to by the user. Imagine a student, somebody that's learning about the contents of that information, which is framed as important, life-sustaining, and perhaps they've been using it. Perhaps they have been making extensive notes, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, for the first time ever in an application, a gatekeeping facility is enabled. We're not talking about a clean install. We're talking about a program that was already running, where somebody was using it, making notes. We could say that they were studying, being persuaded, and in the middle of that process are shut off. So yes, I'm talking about the JW app. So if you're with me, what we can do is we can look at this thing together. I'm actually going to read the entirety of what is expected to be read. So please put your seatbelt in or on, strap in, because I'm going to read the whole thing. This is what a person who is studying, who uses this app, is expected to do. So let's just repeat. It's from Jehovah's Witnesses. It's from Watchtower. It's a contract, actually says that. And a person is expected to agree to it in order to access Jehovah's Witness Jesus and Jehovah's Witness Jehovah's information that is, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, life-saving. It just emphasizes. So now imagine, just before we look at this, Christ saying, well, in order for you to hear me, you must make this contract first. Yeah, maybe there's other facilities that are available, but you were using this, but now suddenly, in the middle of you using this, you must make this contract. And what is more, if you had been using this app and you had made study notes in this, really peering into the things that are contained there, you're locked out. You didn't know that. But now you're locked out. While you were using it, you had no idea this was going to come up. But you're now locked out from your notes until such a time as you agree to this contract, which, if we compare to legal history, Jehovah's Witnesses have proficiently and aggressively defended its institutions above the welfare of people. So much so that you get governments taking matters to Supreme Courts to try and unblock their dilemmas. That's the kind of complexity. And we're talking about trained professionals. How on earth would somebody with very limited education be able to weigh this thing up in reasonableness, in an educated way? So yes, Jehovah's Witnesses, with its institution, with its legal department, it's aggressively defended its institution, you could say, above the welfare of the people. That's what places like Norway were saying, Norway state. That's what places like Japan, the Japanese government, have been saying, and many more places. So here's the contract that suddenly locked usage, not of a new install of the app, but a surprise pop-up window, which is unprecedented. Many analysts say, oh, this is a nothing burger. Have you heard those words? This is a nothing burger. So we appreciate that point of view. However, as can be seen from Norway, Jehovah's Witnesses have the power to overturn even a governmental decision. That's power. And to call the government wrong, and to call it a victory over a governmental power. This is very, very interesting. So it's able to use a government's own supreme courts against them, against the state. Some people say this is expert maneuvering, using a dilemma situation or a dilemma presentation. So here it is. Ready? Let's begin. Quote, note to users, this document serves as a legal contract for users. Please also see the article why it is not permissible to post publications of Jehovah's Witnesses on a personal website or on social media. This informational app, the application or app, is provided to help you learn more about God, the Bible, and Jehovah's Witnesses. Read, watch, and download the content that interests you. We want others to benefit from this application too, but you may not reproduce its contents on another website or application. You may share what you have learned by directing others to download this application. These terms of use, this agreement, is a legal agreement between Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York, Incorporated, a New York not-for-profit corporation. Watchtower, we, us, or our, and you, a user, you or your of the application, where expressly indicated hereinafter specific rules apply to you if you are an individual or if you are an individual having a habitual residence within the European Union, EU, European Economic Area, EEA, or Switzerland, together referred to as designated countries. Any updates, enhancements, new features, and or the addition of any new application properties are subject to this agreement. This agreement may be revised, modified, or terminated at any time by us at our sole option. You expressly agree that such modifications, revisions, or termination may have a material effect on your ability to use the application. We will give you notice of any material change in these terms of use when you next start the application. If you do not accept the revised and or modified version of these terms of use, then you will not be permitted to continue to use the application. The failure to adhere to this agreement at our sole discretion, in whole or in part, constitutes a material breach of these terms and may subject you to immediate termination of your access and or license to use this application. You expressly agree that we may terminate your access and or license to use the application at our sole discretion for any reason or no reason. You agree to be bound by the terms of this agreement by clicking the Accept button associated with this agreement, or by downloading, installing, copying, or otherwise using our application. Your license to the application is subject to your prior acceptance of this agreement. If you do not agree to be bound by the provisions of this agreement, you may not install, copy, or use the application, and you must immediately delete all copies of the application from your device. 1. Grant of license. This application is licensed, not sold, to you for use only under the terms of this agreement, provided that you have complied with and that you continue to comply with all of the provisions of this agreement. Watchtower hereby grants to you a fully revocable, limited, non-transferable, non-sublicensable, and non-exclusive right to access, use, install, execute, store, display, and run the application on devices that you own or control for the purposes described in this agreement, or otherwise as may be instructed or described by Watchtower in writing. The terms of this agreement will govern any updates provided by Watchtower that replace and or supplement the original application unless such upgrade is accompanied by a separate license, in which case the terms of that license will govern. Some components of the application may also be governed by applicable open source licenses or other third-party licenses. In the event of a conflict between the terms of this agreement and any such licenses shall prevail with respect to those components. 2. Reservation of rights and ownership, third-party content, trademarks. Watchtower reserves all rights related to the application that are not expressly granted to you in this agreement. The application is protected by copyright and other intellectual property laws and treaties. As between you and Watchtower, Watchtower owns all right, title, and interest in and to the application, unless otherwise indicated. 1. All content contained within this application, and 2. All trademarks associated with the application are the property of Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania, Watchtower. For the avoidance of doubt, all intellectual property licensed from a third-party supplier by Watchtower or Watchtower and included in the application shall remain the property of such third party. That's Watchtower and Watchtower. You agree not to remove, conceal, or otherwise modify any copyright, trademark, or other proprietary notice or source identifier contained in or associated with the application, including but not limited to those listed in the open source license attributions. The attributions: we cannot and do not guarantee access to information or other content belonging to any third party which is accessible by you through the application, if any. Adobe, the Adobe logo, Acrobat, and the Acrobat logo are trademarks of Adobe Systems Incorporated. iTunes and iPod are trademarks of Apple Incorporated. Microsoft, the Microsoft logo, and the names of any Microsoft software and products, including Microsoft Office and Microsoft Office 365, are trademarks of Microsoft Incorporated. Android is a trademark of Google LLC. The Android robot is reproduced or modified from work created and shared by Google and used according to terms described in the Creative Commons 3.0 Attribution License. https://creativecommons.org/licenses/by/3.0/US/close bracket. Full stop. All other trademarks and registered trademarks are property of their respective holders. 3. Usage restrictions. The application is intended solely for your personal use as described in this agreement, or otherwise as may be instructed or described by Watchtower in writing. You agree that you shall not and that you shall not permit any other person directly or indirectly to a. Rent, lease, loan, sell, resell, transfer, assign, reproduce, copy, publish, transmit, sublicense, distribute, create derivative works of, or otherwise disseminate, exploit, or make available any portion or all of the application. B. Reverse engineer, decompile, modify, adapt, translate, or disassemble any portion or all of the application, including without limitation any of its underlying ideas, algorithms, or structure, or use the application to create new applications, programs, products, or services, except as and only to the extent as may be permitted by the licensing terms governing use of any open source components, including within the application. C. Remove or otherwise modify any trademarks, trade names, service names, graphics, designs, logos, page headers, button icons, scripts, commercial markings, trade dress, or any other proprietary rights appearing through the application, including without limitation the trademarks JW and JW.org, ORG, or any other trademark. D. Display the name, logo, trademark, or other identifier of any individual or entity in such a manner as to give the viewer the impression that such other individual or entity is a publisher or distributor of the application. Or E. Use, post, transmit, or introduce any device, software, or routine which interferes or attempts to interfere with the operation of any aspect of the application. F. Register, attempt to register, or assist anyone else to register any trademarks, logos, domain names, and other distinctive brand features, copyright, or other proprietary rights associated with Watchtower, or any of their cooperating entities. G. Remove, obscure, or alter any notice of copyright, trademark, or other proprietary right appearing in or on any item included within the application. H. Transmit, store, or process health information subject to United States HIPAA regulations. Or 1. Use the application outside of the scope of the license granted in this agreement. You shall comply with and not knowingly violate Google API's terms of service. Although you agree to comply with the above usage restrictions, you may request specific permission to reverse engineer, decompile, modify, adapt, translate, or disassemble any portion or all of the application, including without limitation any of its underlying ideas, algorithms, or structure, or to use the application to create new applications, programs, products, or services. Watchtower shall grant permission at its sole discretion to request the specific permission. Please contact Watchtower by sending an email to developersupport@jw.org. The failure of either Watchtower or you to insist upon strict performance of any provision of this agreement, or the failure of either Watchtower or you to exercise any right or remedy to which it is entitled hereunder or thereunder, will not constitute a waiver thereof, and will not cause a diminution of the obligations established by this agreement. A waiver of any default will not constitute a waiver of any subsequent default. No waiver of any of the provisions of this agreement will be effective unless it is expressly stated to be a waiver and communicated to Watchtower or you respectively by the other party in writing. 4. Uses and prohibited uses of the application and or the content on the application. Subject to the restrictions set out below, you may view, download, and print Watchtower's copyrighted artwork, electronic publications, music, photos, text, or videos from this application for your own personal and non-commercial purposes. Share links to or electronic copies of downloadable publications, videos, or audio programs on this application. You may not and may not allow third parties to post artwork, electronic publications, trademarks, music, photos, videos, or articles from this application on the internet, any website, file sharing site, video sharing site, or social network. Distribute artwork, electronic publications, trademarks, music, photos, text, or videos from this application with or as part of any software application, including uploading such materials to a server for use by a software application. Reproduce, duplicate, copy, distribute, or otherwise exploit any artwork, logos, electronic publications, trademarks, music, photos, text, videos, or other materials on this application for a commercial purpose or for money, even if no profit is involved. Create for distribution purposes any software applications, tools, or techniques that are specifically made to collect, copy, download, extract, harvest, or scrape data, HTML images, or text from this application. This does not prohibit the distribution of free, non-commercial applications designed to download electronic files such as EPUB, PDF, MP3, and MP4 files from public areas of this site. Misuse of the application. Misuse the application, such as interfering with or accessing the application or its services using a method other than what is explicitly provided. Use this application in any way that causes or may cause damage to the application or impairment of the availability or accessibility of the application, or use it in any way that is unlawful, illegal, fraudulent, or harmful, or in connection with any unlawful, illegal, fraudulent, or harmful purpose or activity. Use this application or any of its content, artwork, electronic publications, trademarks, music, photos, text, or videos for any purposes related to marketing. Use the application or any of its content for commercial purposes or to offer or to sell any commercial products or the following: controlled substances, illegal drugs and drug contraband, weapons, pirated materials, instructions on making, assembling or obtaining illegal goods or weapons to attack others, information used to violate the copyrights of, violate the trademarks of, or destroy others' intellectual property or information used to illegally harm any people or animals, or pornography, nudity, escort services, or other content deemed adult related. Use the application or any of its content to violate or encourage the violation of the legal rights of others. For example, this may include the infringement or misappropriation of intellectual property rights of others. Use the application to send or distribute viruses, worms, Trojan horses, corrupted files, hoaxes, or other items of a destructive or deceptive nature. Use the application to engage in any activity that is determined by us in a sole and absolute discretion, to be illegal. Use the application to post, transmit, display, or otherwise make available obscene, profane, defamatory, harassing, abusive, or threatening language. Use the application or its content for any unlawful, invasive, infringing, defamatory, or fraudulent purpose. For example, this may include phishing, creating a pyramid scheme, or mirroring a website. Use the application to generate, distribute, publish, or facilitate unsolicited mass email, promotions, advertising, or other solicitations, spam. Engage in any activity that in our sole and absolute discretion disrupts, interferes with, circumvents, or is harmful to, or threatens to disrupt, interfere with, circumvent, or be harmful to the application, our operations, or the ability of others to effectively use the application. Watchtower is not in any way responsible for any such prohibited uses by you or for any harassing, threatening, defamatory, offensive, or illegal messages or transmissions that you may receive as a result of using the application. As a user of the application, you must 1. Abide by all federal, state, and local laws, and 2. Observe all applicable copyright laws, such as laws apply to music, video games, images, text, and other media in both personal use and in production of electronic information. 5. Termination. This agreement is effective until terminated by you or Watchtower. Your rights under this agreement will terminate automatically if you fail to comply with any of its terms or provisions. Watchtower may immediately terminate this agreement with you and your license to use the application for convenience at any time, for any reason or no reason, without liability or obligation to you. Upon termination of this agreement, you shall cease all use of the application and uninstall and delete the application from all devices or other storage media. In no event will Watchtower be liable for the termination of this agreement or disabling access to the application. 6. Medical information. The content of this application that contains any medical information or references. Medical information is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice, nor is it intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The medical information does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in the medical information. The medical information is not designed, intended, or authorized for use in connection with any medical or life-saving or life-sustaining decisions, systems, or procedures, or for any other application or purpose. Always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified health care provider with any question you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment. This application assumes no liability or responsibility for any errors or omissions in the content of any medical information. Reliance on any medical information is solely at your own risk. 7. Disclaimer of warranties. Your use of the application and any content contained in the application is at your own risk. The application is provided as is, as available, and with all faults. Watchtower hereby disclaims all warranties, representations, and conditions, whether express, implied, or statutory, including but not limited to any implied warranties, duties, or conditions of merchantability, non-infringement, fitness for a particular purpose, reliability or availability, accuracy or completeness, quality, safety, suitability, workmanlike effort, lack of viruses, lack of negligence, or that the application will perform in any particular fashion or produce any particular result or otherwise arising out of or related to the use of the application by you or any other person. Watchtower does not warrant against interference with your enjoyment of the application, that the functions contained in or services performed or provided by the application will meet your requirements, that the operation of the application will be uninterrupted or error-free, or that the application will be free from delays, loss, attack, hacking, or other security intrusions. Watchtower also is not responsible for the provision of any support or any other services, or the failure to provide support or any other services in connection with or related to the application. There are inherent risks in the downloading and using of any software, and Watchtower cautions you to make sure that you completely understand the potential risks before downloading, installing, or otherwise using the application. Neither Watchtower nor any cooperating entity of Watchtower nor any of their directors, officers, volunteers, members, licenses, suppliers, contractors, agents, or representatives, collectively the Watchtower parties, shall be liable for any damages that you or any third party may suffer in connection with or related to your downloading, installing, uninstalling, modifying, or otherwise using the application or any content contained in the application. 8. Limitation of liability. In no event shall Watchtower or any of the other Watchtower parties be liable for any special, incidental, indirect, consequential, or punitive damages whatsoever, including without limitation for lost profits, lost data, business, or goodwill, or for any anticipated lost profits, business, or goodwill, for loss of confidential or other information, for business interruption, for failure to meet any duty, including that of good faith or of reasonable care, for negligence, and for any other monetary or other loss whatsoever arising out of or related to your use of the application and or the content contained in the application, or your inability to use the application and or any content contained in the application or otherwise in connection with this agreement, notwithstanding any damages that you might incur for any reason whatsoever involving the application, including without limitation any of the damages referenced herein. The entire liability of the Watchtower parties collectively and your exclusive remedy hereunder shall be limited to $1,000 $1,000. This limitation of liability provision is intended to apply without regard to whether other provisions of this agreement have proved ineffective. If you lived in the designated countries, the limitation of liability under this clause H shall not apply to A. Damages directly caused by Watchtower's gross negligence or willful misconduct, and or damages to life, body, or health. 9. Indemnity. You shall indemnify, defend, and hold Watchtower and each of the other Watchtower parties harmless from and or against any and all claims, actions, suits and demands, and any and all resulting losses, liabilities, damages, expenses and costs, including without limitation reasonable attorney's fees and disbursements which arise in connection with or which are related to your use of the application and or any content contained in the application, including but not limited to a. your breach of this agreement, including your use of the application in any manner not expressly permitted hereunder, your negligence or misconduct, c. your violation of any law or regulation, d. any representations and warranties made by you concerning any aspect of the application and or the content of the application, e. any claims with respect to acts or omissions of any third party in connection with the application and or the content in the application, or f. any claims made by or on behalf of any third party pertaining directly or indirectly to your use of the application or the content in the application. 10. License to content and indemnification. You expressly represent and warrant that you have the right and or license to post any and all content as defined below posted by you through the use of the application. Content means any and all information provided by you in connection with your use of the application, including without limitation information, content, data, messages, text files, images, video, sounds, other materials, and any of the foregoing provided by you. You represent and warrant that the content provided by you and the use by us of such content will not infringe or misappropriate any patent, copyright, trademark, trade secret, or other intellectual property rights of any third party. You hereby grant us a perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, non-exclusive and royalty-free right and license to use, host, store, modify, copy, distribute, communicate, publish, transmit, publicly display, publicly perform, reproduce, edit, translate, and reformat such content and to prepare derivative works of such content. You agree to defend us and any Watchtower parties at your sole cost and expense against all actions, suits, and other proceedings of a party against any of the Watchtower parties alleging infringement of any patent, copyright, trademark, trade secret, or other right or violation of any license or other intellectual property rights based upon the content provided by you, and you agree to indemnify and hold the Watchtower parties harmless from and against all judgments, losses, liabilities, damages, costs, and expenses, including without limitation reasonable attorneys' fees and attorneys' disbursements arising out of or incurred in connection with such infringement. You understand that you are solely responsible for all content posted on, transmitted through, or linked from the application. You acknowledge that we do not pre-screen or approve content, but that we shall have the right, but not the obligation in our sole discretion to refuse, delete, or move any content that is in violation of this agreement, or for any other reason. 11. Exporting. You may not use or otherwise export or re-export the application or any of its contents except as authorized by United States law and the laws of the jurisdiction in which the application was obtained. In particular, but without limitation, the application may not be exported or re-exported a. into any U.S. embargoed countries, or b. to anyone in the U.S. Treasury Department specially designated nationals list, or the U.S. Department of Commerce denied persons list or entity list. You also agree that you will not use the application for any purposes prohibited by law. 12. Privacy. The terms regulating the handling of personally identifiable information and other information submitted by you in connection with the application is described in the privacy policy of this application. 13. Governing law. Timely filing of claims. This agreement shall be governed and construed in accordance with the laws of the state of New York, excluding New York's choice of law principles, and all claims arising out of or relating to this agreement, or the breach thereof, whether sounding in contract, tort, or otherwise, shall likewise be governed by the laws of the state of New York, excluding New York's choice of law principles. If you live in the designated countries, you may also choose the governing law and courts of your country of residence to apply to any dispute arising out of or relating to these terms. Specifically excluded from application to this agreement is the law known as the United Nations Convention on the International Sale of Goods. You agree that regardless of any statute or law to the contrary, any claim, suit, or action that you may have against any of the Watchtower parties arising under or related to this agreement must be brought within 6 months after the date on which the event underlying such claim occurred or is alleged to have occurred. 14. Miscellaneous. This agreement, the privacy policy for the app and the attributions, and any other written instructions related to the application which are provided by Watchtower constitute the entire agreement between you and Watchtower relating to the application, and they supersede all prior or contemporaneous oral or written communications, proposals, and representations with respect to the application or any other subject matter covered by this agreement. Watchtower will be excused from performance in this agreement to the extent that performance is prevented, delayed, or obstructed by causes beyond its reasonable control. If any provision of this agreement is held to be void, invalid, enforceable, or illegal, all other provisions of this agreement shall continue in full force and effect. Watchtower may assign or otherwise transfer this agreement to any of its cooperating entities. The failure of Watchtower at any time to require performance by you of any provision of this agreement shall in no way affect Watchtower's right to enforce such provisions, nor shall the waiver by Watchtower of any breach of any provision of this agreement be taken or held to be a waiver of any further breach of the same provision. End quote. This is the organization that trained me. Want to know why I talk the way I do? So where are we? I think this is about, I would estimate, it's almost half an hour to read that. To say, yes, I truthfully, in front of the creator of the universe, I truthfully have read this and I agree to it. So here's the commentary. So now I'm going to say that as I read it, I may have read it imperfectly. It's a lot. It's a lot to read. And I'm not going to go back and edit. I'm not going to do it. Because it's just too much. Now here's the commentary. What stands out immediately isn't merely that this is a software license agreement. Many apps have those. But we've got to consider the context and the power relationship surrounding it. Because the issue that is being pointed to is philosophical, legal, theological, and psychological all at once. The app is framed as spiritually essential. I remember persons working on this. I remember how it started off. I remember the announcement. I was there at the announcement in New York. I was in the branch in New York at the announcement of this app. So that's around about what, 2012, 2013, around there. Now, the organization here, you want to call it instrumentalities, but they lump it in. Organization presents itself as the exclusive channel of divine truth. Access to accumulated study infrastructure can suddenly be conditioned upon assent. I know with the app, I had notes, extensive notes. There was extensive research notes. And suddenly, now there's a contract. So it was installed, then there's notes. And I believe it's important, maybe for no other person, maybe just me. Those notes, I'm going to tell you why they were important, or they are important. They're important because I know that my app is unique. It's very, very unique on the planet because it's got notes from research department that others do not have. All right. So it's kind of like, man, are you saying your app, you've been locked out because of the notes that are there? I'm just presenting a point of view. It's very interesting that this has happened. So, the institution reserves sweeping unilateral rights while disclaiming responsibility. So the combination changes how the contract feels and how many users interpret it. Remember, we hear this phrase, nothing burger. Somebody's gone to a lot of trouble. And I know the advisors. I know how some of those advisors got into the branch. I know how some of those advisors changed wording on their applications to benefit themselves. I know that. Right. They're very proud about that. Okay. So from a purely legal standpoint, what does this resemble? A highly protective enterprise software, EULA, drafted to maximize institutional control and minimize liability. But from a theological standpoint, critics see tension between the idea of freely available life-saving truth. Put our picture of Jesus Christ, saying, here, this is life-saving information. And now add a contractual gatekeeping backed by corporate legal architecture. Various systems, ecclesiastical systems, Roman law systems, maritime law. Look at Jesus Christ again. So I'm going to say, imagine with analogy, I hope with some rhetoric power, just imagine Christ saying, before hearing me, Jesus Christ, you must accept these unilateral legal terms. And you sit with him for half an hour going through these things. You haven't asked how these things work, but you are hit with half an hour of contractual information with extensive legalese. Perhaps you're a fisherman, carpenter, seamstress, farmer. So if we've got that picture of Jesus Christ sitting with us now, or standing and saying, well, before you hear me, you've got to accept this unilateral legal term. That contrast, when we say, or we hear these words, this is a nothing burger. This is exactly what many current associates, former members, former associates, persons who have faced abuse in various forms. This is what analysts react to emotionally. Can't remove the emotion. So it's not because software licenses are unusual. Yeah, we know what these are. We've come across them. but because of the claimed spiritual exclusivity attached to the platform. So several aspects are especially significant. One, at our sole discretion. It's a repeated language. In half an hour, you hear sole discretion, for any reason or no reason, fully revocable, terminate at any time. It creates an asymmetrical relationship. The user receives conditional access, revocable permissions, no ownership, no guarantee of continuity. The organization retains interpretive authority, termination authority, content authority, platform authority. Yeah, for ordinary software, this is common. But for something presented as spiritually indispensable, it becomes ethically charged. Then you've got retroactive lock-in. I've mentioned this, I've highlighted this. It's important psychologically. This isn't a new install in my case. This app wasn't a new install. Yes, I've got all the various progressions. I've even got the old one that was made, you could say, informally. So I've got that developing over the years. But in this case, users had already invested time underlining, going through the Bible several times, creating workflows, embedding study habits, storing notes, mentally or structurally. There's a notes section around the app. Bear in my case, Matt, why were you booted out? I'm going to tell you plainly. My problem started when an elder told the congregation, go and do something that was illegal. I've got to say alleged. The congregation, but the associates acted upon it. And I merely said, I'm standing ground. I'm saying, what is the clarification from the governing body? Can the congregation elders, can we get together and present this? Because of all of that, Matt, you've got to face the deepest of punishments. That's what's happened. And it surrounds liability. Picture Christ. There's Christ. Picture him. So the contract appeared later as a gating mechanism. Boom! Suddenly it pops up. Never seen this before. Never seen it. Wasn't there in the install. So that creates a perception for somebody who is surviving or trying to get out of or decompile the problems of the psychological harm. We've heard psychological violence. In my case, I say allegedly there was violence. Under law, under South African law, there was violence as a result of somebody being told, obey this elder who's overreached, who's gone beyond what was in print. It was dodgy print to begin with, but he went further. And it wasn't one congregation, it was several congregations where this happened. So, why is this a problem psychologically? Remember this word coercion. Because now, let's say you were recovering. Let's say you are working towards exercising your right to freedom of religion. You're saying, no, I'm going to return. I'm going to go into the meeting and I'm going to go and sit there because they've assured me of safety. I'm going to go, yeah, okay, whatever's happened, whatever harm has occurred to me, whatever bad things have happened year after year after year after year after year, I am going to believe them. I'm going to take up the offer and I'm going to sit there and I'm going to play ball absolutely by what this character who put the congregation into harm, allegedly. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to take it. This letter creates the perception of coerced assent. It brings the reminder back. It brings in the dependency leverage. May I do this? I don't know the rules. I can't go through half an hour of this information again, and I can't go through all of the legal jargon. It's just too complex. I'm not a supercomputer. I'm not an AI supercomputer that's able to go into all of these things, and I've got to just come and ask you what the question is. And you know what? You're going to keep my mail in the registered postage loop. And it's just going to go round and round and back and forth and disappear. And 6 months later, I'm still not going to have the answer. And if I phone, I'm going to be put through to this department and that department and this department and never really fully get the answer. It's a dependency leverage. Or consent after entanglement. I've engaged, and now what? So legally, companies often do this. This is not something that's unique to Watchtower. They do this during major term revisions. You want to know why we are in the state that we're in on the planet? Well, take a look at this. Legal doesn't mean ethical. But in religious environments, users may experience it differently because refusal can feel spiritually costly. So you've got this institutional priority versus human welfare again. This is the reminder. So you go, Matt, this is your opinion. Okay, yeah. Fine. But this is how I operate. You're going to go, well, Matt, if this is your opinion, you're flawed, pal. Well, then I'm flawed. Because I connect this to a broader historical criticism of what's going on. I go wheat and weeds. I go, look, in my opinion, this is not the Jesus Christ of the Bible. This is not him. Matt, that's your opinion. Yeah, it's my opinion. I cannot see Jesus Christ doing this. Can't see it. What we have is an extraordinary sophistication legally in defending institutional prerogatives. And I go, this is not Jesus. Just don't see this. Now, you say, well, Matt, that's fringe. The more you learn, I go, no, I challenge that. That's not fringe. Because it repeatedly appears in court examinations and analysis. You're going, Matt, you're just wacko. Well then, Norway government is wacko. The Supreme Court is wacko for taking its time to come up with this. Matt, you're an idiot. Well then these governments are idiots. I don't think so. They've got degrees, certification, accolades. You've got media investigations coming up with this frequently. Matt, we don't like how you present the complication. The complication exists at that frontier level. It exists in the academic religious studies. You're not going to find some simplicity there. You're going to have to use a dictionary, and you're going to have to make sure what dictionary you're using. You're going to find it in survivor testimony over and over and over again. And you're going to find it in governmental disputes such as those in Norway, Japan, Australia, involving Jehovah's Witness, deregistration controversies. And the critics argue that legal defensibility, that corporate insulation and doctrinal control, it often appears structurally prioritized over transparency. No, we don't have to give you this information. Sure. Picture Jesus Christ. Picture Jesus. No, I'm not going to be transparent. Even when there was a question, like, what was it? Eat my body and drink my blood. And people went, "Whoa, we can't handle this, we're leaving, bye," cancelled. Imagine this on YouTube. Tick, 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 tick. Subscribers down to just his immediate disciples or apostles. Well, they spoke to him, and of course Jesus clarified. He didn't hold on to that. He said, "Oh, you stuck around. Okay, I'll tell you. Yeah, this is what it means." So he was transparent, okay? But you've got this institution prioritizing against, member autonomy, harm mitigation. That's what it's about. It's surrounding this harm mitigation. It's designed to shield itself. So supporters of the organization, supreme consciousness, God here, organization here, humans, by the way, humans that are doing this. So supporters of the humans above supreme ethics, because that's what it's about. Your doctrinal integrity requires centralized control. That's what it's all about. Copyright protection prevents corruption of teachings. Where's the teaching coming from? What's happening over here? So it's protecting this. Right. The hostile actors, and I remember asking this decades ago, I go, if it's so good, why is there this hostility? What's happened? Why is there this energy that's there? Where is this hostile actor that's frequently misrepresenting the material? Yeah, I have seen it. I've seen things done that way. But I've also seen persons who are going, well, I challenge us whether we're wrong. Challenge us. So yes, although there is that corruption that does happen, you've got people that are holding truth of their experience. And that's two very, very different things. So there's genuinely competing frameworks here. And there's an irony, theological irony, because one of the strongest symbolic tensions is this, that the early Christians, which we say, oh, this is going according to the purity of the early Christian movement. How did it spread? Copying letters. The Bible's a copy of a copy of a copy. The Christians of the first century, they shared testimony. Copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. Redistribution, open circulation. Here you go, I wrote this out. There you go. How do we know it's the same? Well, I counted the letters and I put a number in the corner. That's how, biblical texts were done. But the agreement that we see here tightly restricts redistribution, archiving. Who's going to go to this trouble? Derivative analysis. Who's going to examine? It's just going to go, it's too much trouble. Half an hour of this even. It's just too much trouble. It's not going to be done. That's the design. It's designed to do that. Reposting. No. Automated extraction. Nah, you can't do that. You can't even use a computer now. Independent software tooling. Oh, I want to connect this to an AI because, gee, this took half an hour to look at, and to go through all of the words, I've got to click each word. How long is it going to take for me as a student to even get through that, to make an informed decision? This is just one example of a pattern that exists in many, 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 many parts of how this all works. This is just one app. So, what do we get here? Something deliberately produced, and that is a paradox. I've called it double binds. Because a religion centered on evangelism, operating through highly controlled intellectual property governance, has been created. And the critics, they describe this as corporate religion wrapped around sacred language. Supporters say, no, this is responsible stewardship of doctrinal purity. We're doing the responsible thing. Christ is saying, well done, keep it up, excellent work. So this words or phrase, the nothing burger debate, it's come up before. And yeah, there's a point there. Sure, got it. Got the point. Why some analysts dismiss this? Because they say, well, large organizations are similar broad EULAs. They go, no, there's higher laws that would protect against misuse. Okay, look at Norway. When you've got alleged victims of abuse, did they get justice? Did they? So you're saying that those higher laws protect. Did they? Did they protect those people? Look at what happened in Pennsylvania. How long were those leaders able to operate before they get sentenced, tried and sentenced, put into prison? And it's an embarrassment. How long did it take? How long did it take an abuse victim to come forward? Is it on average 26 years? Is it? Took half an hour to read that. But the nothing burger debate. Courts often uphold these agreements. That's why you've got these files that come out about governance and persons connected to governance where they have committed atrocities, where they have stayed out of courts or they've stayed out of prison for so long. And these are the people with launch codes to nuclear weapons that could ignite our atmosphere. So the nothing burger debate. Yeah. Analysts dismiss it. They say, well, technically users are free not to use the app. Okay. But why do others see it as significant? Because religious authority alters the practical meaning of choice, especially when salvation is tied to organizational loyalty, and when community belonging may depend on participation. So the debate isn't really about software law alone. It's about informed consent, spiritual dependency, and institutional asymmetry, and whether a salvation mediating organization, okay, should function through aggressive corporate contractualism. The corporation says, little Sally, you must go and love Auntie Susie whether you like it or not, because if you don't, the lawyers are coming. I love you, Auntie Susie. So the Norway parallel that I've been linking this to, the observation about Norway, because I go, this is very useful. It's insightful in rhetoric because it illustrates institutional capacity. The organization has demonstrated an incredibly sophisticated legal coordination, international strategy here, persistence through appeals. We're going to take it to the top. And willingness to challenge state judgments. It's not afraid to do this. So it means that when members, associates, encounter language like, oh, sole discretion, or terminate at any time, or no liability, they interpret it not as a boilerplate, but through the lens of historical, formidable legal institution. And that changes perception dramatically. It's designed to do that. Nothing burger. Really. So a particularly interesting clause we can zoom in on. I'm going to have to grab this. Where is it? You expressly agree that such modifications, revisions, or termination may have a material, effect on your ability to use the application. This is very revealing. Why? Because in plain language, they explicitly reserve the right to fundamentally alter your access later. And it's unusually candid. So the core question, where are we? Almost an hour. The core question that I'm endeavoring to raise is, can a faith claim to be the sole channel of divine truth while simultaneously governing access through unilateral corporate contractual power? Because that's ultimately not just a legal question. It's ecclesiological. There we go. I wanted to say ecumenical. It's ecclesiological. That's the word. Forgive me. Ethical, psychological, and spiritual. And that's why many people react strongly to what others dismissed as just another app agreement, just a nothing burger. So remember the child, and with all respect to beautiful Susies that are out there, and handsome and wonderful Uncle Joes, I'm just saying, you have a little developing child, and you tell the child, go tell Auntie Susie Sue you love her, even if you don't. Even if you don't like her, even if you don't feel love. You've got to go to Auntie Susie, who's been cold and legal and conditional for a long time, and you must embrace her because it's expected that you love her and that you show true love, and you must make your heart love her, or else Auntie Susie will make sure your friends hear lies about you and hate you and never speak to you ever again, and that your family is strained. We'll say, no, it's normal family. Families are just crap to begin with, so it's normal family. But the family is going to be strained. You're going to sit at the dinner table with your family, and it's going to be strained, potentially to the breaking point, or you've got a spouse and it just wants to divorce you and hand papers to you and make your life a living hell. And that whatever trust you had just disintegrates. Whatever warm relations you have just disappear. And again, they will have maybe necessary business relations with you, legal relations with you. You'll get a lawyer's letter. You know, that's the essential communication that you might get. Superficial hellos you might get. And if you invested in Auntie Susie Sue and trusted her with assets, she'll make sure you never get a cent of it. So by all means, please, it is expected of you to go and love Auntie Susie Sue. You must love her with your whole heart, mind, and soul, because unless you do, she will make your life a living hell. And then one day, when she's an angel in heaven, she's gonna kill you. Ask her about it. She gets very happy about this. She gets very excited about it. Especially at annual general meetings where she gets a seat. You will rot on the ground and the birds will pick out your eyes. And the angels will praise her, along with the marriage of Christ and God forever and ever. Hallelujah. Go love Auntie Susie Sue right now, you born sinner, enemy of God. Okay, I've really loaded it up. That's the strong illustration. Like I say, maybe you can do better, but it's emotionally charged for a reason. The illustration is supposed to be strong because it's showing it's not true love, but a performative thing. It's dead spiritually, in essence. You've killed free will, in essence. It's actually an abusive relationship, because the Auntie Susie Sue, excuse us to the beautiful Sues out there, but the Auntie Susie Sue illustration is emotionally intense because it compresses several dynamics into one human scale metaphor. Coerced affection, conditional belonging, fear-based loyalty, threat of abandonment, reputational control, family fragmentation, and apocalyptic punishment tied to non-conformity. You don't love her? Don't go and hug her? Whoa. What we're describing is the difference between love that emerges freely from trust and safety and attachment maintained through fear of consequences. And this thing comes about through the abuse that's happened over years. Not one case, not an isolated case, not maybe just a few isolated cases. Many cases where this has just been going on year after year after year after year after year after year. So much so, persons say, well, I was a slave to this system. 40 years, 50 years, my whole life. So the distinction is central in many discussions about high control. And I'm going to add this word, negative high control religious systems. I'd say, there's your wheat, there's your weeds. It's these weeds that are the problem. Okay? So that metaphor especially highlights something psychologically important. A child can be trained to perform love long before they actually feel emotionally safe. So externally they hug. I love you, Auntie Susie Sue. I love you. I'm smiling. I'm complying. I love you, Auntie Susie Sue. Smile. I mean, this is it. Matt's overacting. And so there's these, conditioned, repeat, approved phrases. But internally you've got fear. Susie Sue's caused this child to wet herself with fear, grief, suppression, dependency, and survival calculation. I mean, this is what it is. So the child, what have you got here? This is not cool stuff that's coming out of the formative years here. And it may be driving the behavior instead of genuine relational warmth. And this is the message that perhaps many persons who've escaped these abusive situations, former members or persons stuck in those places where they're captive, where you've got various high control groups, I mean, even non-religious, they often use words like, yeah, I had to perform. It was performative, it was conditional, it was transactional, it was trauma bonding, manufactured consent. Not because every individual inside the religion lacks sincerity. Oh, no. Many are deeply sincere. But because the systemic, the systemic incentives surrounding belonging can distort the authentic emotional freedom. So that's why the illustration comes about. You go, Matt, that was a hectic illustration. But it touches, I hope, a profound theological tension that if love must be maintained under threat of social annihilation, divine destruction, loss of family, then your critics just go, well, is that love in the fullest sense, or it's an enforced allegiance? That question has existed for centuries. It's not new. It's been there regarding religious philosophy. Some traditions emphasize love flowing from freedom. I mean, I taught that. I taught conscience. That's what I believed. I believed, and still do, about inner transformation. Okay, you can't fake this. But others emphasize absolute strict obedience, absolute submission, covenant loyalty. Yeah, those things are important. But man, this tight tight thing where if you're abused, you can do nothing about it. Excuse me. This fear of divine judgment, when those become imbalanced towards fear, people can experience spirituality less as nourishment and more as existential surveillance. That's what happens. So the imagery that I'm using here about being hated, cut off, losing family warmth, eventually destroyed, it reflects how this apocalyptic framework and similar frameworks like it can psychologically magnify ordinary disagreement into this cosmic betrayal. And for individuals who are deeply invested emotionally, spiritually, socially, financially, the resulting rupture can feel less like, oh, I changed churches, and more like my entire reality structure just collapsed. Or I don't even go to church anymore. My reality's collapsed. So that's why discussions around shunning, let's use the word, folks, and conditional association, they're so emotionally charged around places like Jehovah's Witnesses and similar groups. The Jehovah's Witnesses do this because you get somebody that's a bad actor and they're protected. I mean, it's until you actually experience it, you can just go, no, I just can't believe that this happens. It's happening, and it's happening beyond just the religious sector. It's very hard to believe when you go, well, the discipline is loving, the discipline is to protect you. The discipline is weaponized, folks. It's weaponized. That's what we're targeting. We're targeting the weaponized discipline when things have gone wrong. I'm not saying, oh, we scrap discipline. Let's make the distinction. When you've got somebody who believes, no, the separation is protecting spiritual purity, they're in a dwell. That's your active member going around happily going, no, I'll defend this. Defend this. You go, you have no idea. You think that obedience is preserving salvation. You got no idea about the abuse that's there. So from inside that mindset, that belief structure, your actions at outsiders, persons who haven't been booted out, or persons who just say, I can't stand this environment anymore. The outsiders experience it as acidic, as vitriol, as coercive. Your insiders, they interpret it as, necessary. Necessary expressions of faithfulness. And so you get this clash. You get the clash of interpretive frameworks. That's enormous. One person's experienced these things, another person hasn't. One person's experience perhaps lacks the language. I mean, how long have we been spending talking about this? Just this one letter, this contract that you've got to agree to get the app working. So some persons would read it, other persons would go, we don't care less. I'm going to say that the persons who don't care, just click, let's get on with it. It's fine. You passed the test. Congratulations, well done. Now you can go through. Off you go. I'm going to say you're ignorant of what's happening, and that's qualified you. No, I just click, dunk, I don't care. That's how humanity has got into the jam, bad jam, that it's in. That's the clash. So one side experiences protection and order, the other side experiences emotional captivity and conditional love. So this metaphor that I've given, love that must be constantly proven under threat, ceases to resemble love and begins to resemble compelled performance. And so yes, this is a serious moral and spiritual critique. It's not merely an emotional complaint. It's very, very serious. This is why I say that what one might say is a nothing burger. I want to validate that. Yes, sure, got it. That's how the world operates. For others, very, very triggering thing, because if you faced extreme abuse, or if you've experienced this language, then you realize, yeah, this is a love that has to be constantly proven under tremendous, tremendous threat. Is it love? Is it? Does it resemble love to you? I'm going to say, again, it looks like compelled performance. And free will, there is none. Thank you for listening to this. If you've had an interest in this, thank you very, very much. That was a long one. But again, say, let's put it into the system. I think that's what it is. It's about, let's get through this thing and shove it into the system and let the algorithms deal with it, let the AIs deal with it, and whoever's genuinely interested, let's see what comes out of this in examination, because yeah, invariably these things kind of collapse in on themselves eventually. It can't stay like this. Humanity can't stay like this in order for us to progress. So thanks again. This is Millais Gray signing off. Please go well.